Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna da Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Here I am. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. I'm Heath. I'll be your host tonight. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the office, and welcome to Table Talk. I feel like it has been a while since we have all been here and been able to be together. But tonight, once again, finally, we're back with both Doug and Brianna to talk about Brianna's book, City of Reckoning, right here. This is part 2 of our discussion. Welcome, Doug, and welcome, Brianna.
What's happening, everybody?
How's it going?
Good to see you. Good to see you. So we are finally through this gigantic book right here. This monster debut novel of Brianna's novel. So I tried, and we both tried the last time to get all the way through it. But it's a big
long book.
Yes, it's well, that's with the pronunciation guide, but it's like 770 pages, 771 pages here, or something like that. So, I got through it. I think I finished it last week. I think I finished it like last Tuesday or something like that. So, all right. And I got some notes on themes and things like that. Hey, Sherry Lee. Oh, let's see who else here. We got lots of people here in the chat. So let's see. James Bacon Gaming is in the chat. Robert's here. Hey, Robert, good to see you. We've got Charlie. Good to see you, Charlie. Sable Phoenix is here. Emma da Silva is right here,
Hey.
as is Sherry Lee. So
Yeah,
good to
what's
see
up
you.
to the chat? I missed you guys. It's been a while that we've all been able to get together.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Missed
Sable
you
says
guys
you look
too.
great. Yes, you've got quite a look going for you tonight.
I recently reapplied whatever the fuck you call it. Toner to my hair. So maybe that's what you're noticing.
Hey, but what about me? I combed my hair. I did all
It's less yellow than it was a few days ago.
And you got the sword earrings going?
I do. I have. Oh, and apparently, my brother is listening in. Riley is unsure because he hasn't read City of Reckoning. I was like, you're gonna hear spoilers in this chat, but whatever. He, like you, he read the like beta, years ago, like a very early draft, a very early version of it. But I have some updates I feel I should share since it's been a while that I think the community would want to know.
Okay.
So one, I recently had, if those who remember, we did a viewing of my short film, The King, here on the channel. And we did like a watch party together and like a Q&A and stuff. I basically had that same experience in person a couple weeks ago. So there's a theater here. Actually, it's on my water bottle, the Bug Theater in Denver.
I got your newsletter.
Yeah, so you saw. Oh, welcome to the newsletter. I didn't know you were on. And then the Emerging Filmmakers Project is this thing they do every third Thursday, where they show local filmmakers, like up and coming filmmakers, short films, and it's really cool. It's a great community. Anyone that's ever in Denver, I highly recommend checking it out. And so they showed my film, and it was really cool. I got to see it on a big screen, and it was great
cool
because
in and of itself.
Yeah, because it had been at a film festival a few months ago, and it was kind of a letdown of an experience for me. So this really was like, it was so, it was kind of the redemption of that experience, because it was everything I'd kind of hoped the other one was. And I got to do like a Q&A and stuff too. And it was really cool. So I wanted to share that. That was a really cool experience.
Awesome.
And then also the short script for my next film that I want to use as as my calling card. I just last week, 2 weeks, whatever. It was the same week this happened. I found out I am a quarterfinalist. So to
congratulations.
For a grant to get funding for it. Basically.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. So I'll find out next month. What's that?
Was that Screencraft?
The Screencraft, exactly. Yep. We're speaking to another Screencraft award winner over here, because didn't Faraway Bird get a Screencraft? It was a
finalist for the Cinematic Book Award.
Nice, yeah. But I love Screencraft, so this is my first time being able to I'm finally like being able to apply to one of their contests. For a couple years I've been like waiting until it's my turn. But yeah. Oh, I guess I should share one other thing too, because this is it's related to the community. So as many of you know, I've been working on a horror feature script for a while. I've been workshopping it with Cameron, who comes on the show, and he thinks it's very close to being done. I'm working today and kind of tomorrow, basically, on finishing it, so that I can. It's like very small things left, and I'm going to submit it to a pitching kind of an opportunity to potentially be able to pitch it on August 9th. So I'm on a
awesome.
deadline.
Awesome. You're very productive. That's great. Plus, I think you're working on the Blood Pal, or the second book for City of Reckoning.
Yep. I'm not super far into it, but it is in progress. That's kind of the film stuff. Specifically, the 3 film portfolio projects are my highest priority. So I'm in between working on those. I've been getting a little bit of work done on the Blood Temple, but at some point soon it'll get my full attention. Yep. So that'll since it's been a while since we've been on the podcast, those are the things that have.
Well, that's a lot. Those are a lot of updates.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Yeah.
Well, all right. You just talked a whole bunch, but I'm going to do that some more here. How do you want to set up this discussion for this? It's the second part of this discussion, so it can be the second part of the book. But on the other hand, there are definitely going to be things that we're going to have to return to probably in the first part of the book because their theme hadn't been completely developed yet, or that kind of thing. So it's the second part of the discussion. We hadn't been through the entire book last time. We have now. But how do you want to frame this discussion for everyone, Brianna?
I guess I don't really have a thought on framing it. What I could do, Heath, is you have a list of topics. I could briefly share what my remaining topics are, and then if you want to take the lead on where we should go next.
Okay. Well, what's your big top? What's a big topic?
We probably should have done this before I went live, but I came here late. So one of the things is talking about character arcs, and some that are positive, some that are negative, and discussing that. I also have kind of a marketing discussion that is about whether or not it should have been YA, which is a whole thing to talk about. And then, I think we were coming back to talking about the midpoint part of the story. And I had a question for Doug about the poison apple archetype. And then I wanted to return to the concept of wings. So those are two things that are kind of following up from the last conversation. If my voice sounds weird, it's because it is, by the way. I'm recovering from a horrible cold. So, but those are some of those are my topics. I didn't have very many, but each of those are, a whole conversation. So
very cool. Yep, I wore my Batman shirt just to for the Nocturan bat wings.
Yep, gotta represent. I wore mine last time, so
that's right.
What do you think, Keith?
Okay. Okay. I got all these different. Okay. It seems like I got this, but they're all they don't seem terribly related. So I guess I'll just pick one. I don't
Should we talk? Because I feel like I guess there are two ways we can do it. We can do this topically, or we can go, because last time we kind of went through the story a little bit chronologically and more or less. So we could do that too. We could kind of pick up where we were before.
What? Well, okay. I don't remember exactly where we left off. What was the last thing? Do you remember the last thing that happened? We might go to theme. I was trying to think of the last thing that happened before. Had we talked about her not first encounter, but second encounter with Charris in the capital city?
That would be the midpoint. So we can talk about the midpoint if you want, because basically the midpoint of the story for each character arc is around the same time, and it's like all the worst possible things that can happen to each of them pretty rapidly. So if you want, we can go there.
Let's talk about character arc first. Let's start with character arcs. You can talk about midpoints and things like that, because let's set it up this way. This book not only is a very long book for a debut novel, but it is also a multiple character point of view novel. I don't know if we brought that up last time or not, but you've got several different characters who all have their point of view chapters as we go. And this group of friends, you probably know exactly how many different point of view chapters there are. So you're telling the story, multiple points of view. Mm-hmm. How did you weave these different characters, their character arcs together? What were you thinking about their character arcs being woven together over the arc of the entire story?
I would say when it comes to weaving them together, most of that just has to do with what's going to be most interesting and what's going to keep the reader's interest. So that's the fun challenge I find with writing multiple points of view, that in multiple drafts I was always shifting. I was definitely moving chapters around a lot, which helps if you're writing in Scrivener, because you really just drag and drop. Be like, okay, actually maybe it should go here. A lot of that is pacing, because if you look too closely, some of the chapters aren't technically, no one would notice, but it's not always technically exactly chronological, in the sense that some of the things that are happening when they're out in the desert, for example, aren't the timing isn't exactly when the other stuff would happen, but it's the flow of what would it's about the reading experience more, I would say. So yeah, I don't know if that answers that question.
Okay, but you wanted them to all hit their midpoint of their arcs at the same time.
More or less. Although there's a little bit of a gap, simply because, for example, with Kindy's arc, when she's having her midpoint, disaster, I really felt that it was important for that section to just be just all at once. I didn't want to cut away to another point of view, which isn't intuitive. At first, I was thinking I should, because that's more suspenseful to cut away, but it isn't always. Sometimes when you cut from one point of view to another point of view, it just takes you out of the story. And that actually makes people stop reading. I've been a reader having that happen to me so many times, where if you cut too soon, because it's not a movie. It's not like you can actually force someone to go to the next point of view. Like if they're desperate to find out what's going to happen, they'll just skip ahead. Like they'll just look and read the next chapter. So I feel like what is it that the reader most wants to know at this moment? So like for Kindy's, for that part when Kindy is captured by Charris in the middle, or 60% or whatever, I thought that people were going to be really like, they want to know what's happening next. So I just stayed with that arc until it got to a good pause. And then we shifted over to, I think the next thing we shifted to the kids in the desert to experience what they're going through. Yeah. So, but it is more or less, obviously they're all having their midpoint roughly around the same time.
Well, I thought you did that very well because, like you, I can get annoyed if we don't stick with characters sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like I don't, Game of Thrones is a great example of a well-written multi-point of view story, and it can sometimes get annoying as if every time you start a new chapter, you're totally shifting settings and point of view.
Well, sometimes with him, your character might not even be in the book you're reading. Like, well, we'll get back to that person in the next book.
Oh yeah, like the end of book 5, there's like a whole new point of view that comes in out of nowhere. But it was good. It was good. To me, it showed some discipline on your part to when a new chapter started that I was still with Kindy, for example, and then it kept going. So I was like, okay, good. And for a lot of the reasons you just cited, I didn't feel like that was the natural stopping point. I felt like we needed more. Mm-hmm. So I thought you handled the pacing and the shifts in point of view very well throughout the book. And at the end, I did notice the picking up of the pace.
Yeah, see that.
The chapters were much shorter.
Because once we're in that.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, of course, that's on purpose because now the pacing is shifting. I want you to have a different emotional experience. I want you to feel the sense that we're building up, that we're anticipating. And so, of course, for that, now at that point, we're shifting more rapidly between different characters. But, that is what you kind of want emotionally at that part of the story.
Right. No, I thought that was great. I say that in a positive sense, the picking up of the pace.
I'm just explaining more. Yes.
We should tell. I mean, I know we went over this on the first one, but if anybody who's just here for the second discussion, we should say this is a medieval fantasy story. So we're talking about a fantasy
it's not strictly
story.
Medieval. It's more.
It is not strictly medieval. In fact, we could talk about that, but if we're not talking about a sci-fi, like if you're just coming in, we're talking about generally a fantasy. Not strictly medieval, but we're talking about people fighting with swords and things like that and with magic and that kind of characteristics here. And on the back, I'll really read the back so people know if you're coming in or need a refresher on what we're talking about right here. It says, "How far would you go for freedom? Kindy Sharro is used to hiding. As a nocturne, her bat wings, claws, and night vision place her under constant threat of hunters who cruelly slaughter her kind for sport. But everything changes the day of the invasion. The Dorish Empire drafts the Nocturans persecuted to help defend against a godlike foe. Kindy enters the war, but she has an ulterior motive. Use the war to destroy her arch enemy, Charris Pouden, before he gains enough power to destroy her first. Meanwhile, Lycia, Maolo, an elite wolf-accompanied warrior, plots rebellion against the Dorish Empire. When she's drafted to fight for her enemies, she must find a way to subvert the war for her own purposes. But suspicion and distrust haunt her every move. This war has many sides, and she's not sure which one she's on anymore. The bonds of friendship will be tested, alliances will be questioned. In a story of political intrigue, ethics of war, and young love, one question must be answered. Which side will you join?"
That's City of Reckoning.
There you go. That is City of Reckoning. If you were coming in, that's what we're talking about. So, if it's how do you describe it? We could say, or even how people define medieval could be talked about. But then, how do you define the fantasy setting?
I would say it's more late ancient. Like when I was drawing, if I had to research something like medicinal technology or something like that, or I was trying to get ideas for buildings or costumes or something like that. Like I would look into ancient, specifically like the Roman Empire, so like Mediterranean, North Africa, and then also into like West Asia. So I was drawing from a bunch of areas, but that was
what time period?
What's that?
What time period were you focused on in general?
I don't think I gave myself like an exact time, but I would say it would be like more kind of like towards the end of the Roman Empire would be kind of more
late antiquity.
Yeah, like late antiquity is kind of more where I was leaning, but I wasn't being too. Again, you know, it's another world, and so I always feel that there's not a guarantee that in another world you would have things developing technologically and culturally in exactly the same way it did here, as long as it makes sense within its context. So I wasn't like being super strict about it, but that was what I limited myself to, is those regions.
Well, that's very interesting, because I thought you were objecting to the term medieval because it was the other way. When I was reading some things in here, I was like, well, there's a lot of stuff in here, or it seemed like, or some stuff in here that I would read, and then I'd go, so this is post-medieval. This is all that, like, I was thinking this is like some elements of 15th or 16th century or something like that.
What would be an example?
So, well, the culture of the Dorish Empire, I didn't see them. I thought I saw some of them as almost like Victorian. Now, that's not necessarily in dress and style and stuff like that. I wouldn't style that. But like, I kind of felt like their attitudes about going to the ball and the dance, and they've got like that. So that, to me, that was kind of a later kind of a theme. The particular type of house they were living in. I can see how I can see how that could be earlier inspired too. But nobility, they're living in houses. The way the military worked, I thought, okay, I'm kind of getting like later vibes here. Also, they've got like bank notes and things like that. Now, that doesn't mean that like all of this has to develop in but there were elements that I came up with that went, oh, so this is because there's no gunpowder. Nobody has gunpowder.
No.
Or anything like that. But
yeah, they do have godstones.
They do have godstones.
An emerging technology industry.
Greco-Roman imperial family.
Vaguely. I mean, Greco-Roman, and I would say there's quite a lot of like influence from like Persia too, or like that like Mediterranean area. I actually drew quite a lot from the broader Mediterranean area. I said Mediterranean, I meant Mesopotamian. That's the other big word that starts.
Oh, Mesopotamian.
Yeah. Yeah, and all of that I would say is probably more other parts of the world that we'll explore in book 2. There's more of those influences over there, but yeah, up north got our.
Okay, well, anyway. A major part of this book is romance.
Yes.
Do you want to talk? What do you? Why is romance an important part of this book? Why is it an important part to you? Why was having all of the romantic relationships and the romantic relationships between the characters important?
I think because I would say that ties in with the coming of age element, because it's all like first loves, so it's definitely a big part of growing up and finding yourself is like, figuring out yourself romantically and stuff like that too.
Yeah, these weren't like seasoned people finding,
right.
There was inexperience. Yeah, to me,
awkward and shy. Yeah,
it sounds to me like you've wrestled at times with the label, if you even want to call it that, but a young adult umbrella. But
that's one of the topics. Maybe we should get into that actually.
Yeah, well, so when I was reading it, and for whatever reason, that has always been in the back of my head. Is this young adult? Is it not? And I think it is young adult.
That's what I've
however, what's that?
I've concluded that too, but I have a however too, but you go first.
Yeah, there's definitely some howevers because it's not G-rated.
No, the content.
And in a way, it was like it's almost as if you've crafted an epic novel where it's young adult to where you have certain expectations of a kind of fun fantasy adventure with young individuals who are experiencing the world and coming to conclusions, and like their innocence is being shattered. And like you said, there's early and budding romances. There's the awkwardness and the inexperience. And however, they're really surrounded by a very dark and brutal world. So really nothing they do is swashbuckling or I shouldn't say nothing, but like, you know, the idea of fun, high adventure on the high roads and swashbuckling excitement, like that's largely kept away from the reader. And you're really kind of trudging deeper into this nightmare sort of scenario that the world, it's not a fun world. Let's put that, and I don't say that in a negative way. It's a harsh world that your characters go in. So I think you maintain the young adult genre just by the nature of the point of view characters that we're following, but it's almost like you put them into a rated R world.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. The world's rated R, the characters were not necessarily, and yet they're constantly there's that constant tension of the innocent and inexperienced, and then this rated R harsh world from really early on in the story all the way to the end.
Are you're contrasting young adult with, or is it adult or is it young adult? Is that what you were trying to decide?
Adult and young adult, yeah.
Right.
Adult.
I feel like adults, and this is of course
or
totally
general fiction.
Authoritative. Yeah, adults tend to like to read stories with other adults. And in fact, I ran into a concern when I wrote Faraway Bird, because I started with her as a 14-year-old girl. And then she's in her 20s and she's dealing with some very adult stuff there as well. So, you know, I was like, can I keep the audience interested throughout this childish or this 14-year-old phase and then move into? So I think adults do expect or want adults, you know, because it's a different type of character when you're experienced and you're making mistakes and running into new things versus, you know, like you said, a coming of age type of person who has total belief systems that are really untested, that are being tested, and really and limited experience in relationships. I think that's another key element to young adult. You know, what are you drawing upon?
Relate to, whereas an adult might not be as interested in that kind of a topic.
Right. Well, exactly. You have experience in relationships. You know what it is to have a boss, let's say. You know what it might be to get promoted. You have had several relationships. You know, you're experienced. You're guarded. You know what you're doing now. And so that's a whole different thing. I'm dealing with some of that even with Theodora now. Like now she's 25, 26. So, you know, when you're an adult, it's a little bit more complex in some ways because you have to sell the veteran, you know, you have to sell the experience of your character in the story. So, but again, that said, just to backtrack again, in City of Reckoning, although the characters fit the age for coming of age, the story itself is rather adult.
Yeah, and I would add to that because it doesn't happen as often, but you absolutely can have, you know, general fiction or adult fiction books that are from the perspective of children and or teenagers. It really depends on what the themes of the story are and what kind of a perspective it is. So it's like, for example, in your book, you know,
that's true.
We're seeing it we're kind of thinking about these things from an adult perspective, even though we're with her as a child. It's very much from her perspective. It's like, then she grows up and there's the kind of looking back from an adult lens. And that's what you'll see more. Whereas when you have a young, again, this is a big debate. We're this is a huge, like I've listened this topic for hours to understand where my own book fits. But
interesting.
Yeah, this is something I have a lot of thoughts on. I'll get into that in a second. But usually, if it's a young adult book, then it's going to be from the perspective of the kinds of things teenagers deal with, like what you were talking about. You know, like usually themes like, you know, where do I fit in the world? That's a big, actually, I think I have these written down in my notes.
Sense of belonging is a big one.
So here's some things. So coming of age, things like dealing with bullies, identity, your place in the world, fitting in, how others see you, the early stages of romantic or sexual desire from that perspective of lack of experience, self-discovery, friendship. These are all very young adult type themes. But the sex that is in this book is also like YA appropriate. Actually, I did that on purpose. So you know, it's PG-13 sex scene. It's not, you know, explicit. You know, it is a sex scene. It's not fade to black, but it's you know, and also the swearing too, like the swearing, like you can't put F-bombs in a young adult book. That's actually why I went and created like fantasy curses. It was so that I could have the yeah, that's literally why I did that. So I could have that option. And so I kind of went through all this effort of like trying to make it fit for YA, and then but it didn't feel right to the story to hold back on the violence. And that's the thing, like, because it is like the story is dealing with the effects of this kinds of trauma, and I really wanted it to feel like you're there. It just seems like for the story it really matters that you're experiencing these things with the characters as authentically as possible. And so the result is that it is pretty much like an R-rated, like adult level violence. And so when I first put this out, I was going back and forth, and it was because of some of the more mature content that I ended up deciding to categorize it as adult fiction. And I released it that way, and I really do think that probably hurt the release. Like, I really do think that I probably didn't get it to the right kinds of viewers, because there are kinds of readers. I mean, like the kinds of people that like to read young adult would like this, you know, like they may not even be teenagers, because there are a lot of people that like to read young adult are actually like women in their 20s and 30s. That's like one of the big, to the point where in the publishing industry, it's a very controversial thing that a lot of these young adult books are actually more catered to women in their 20s and 30s, and actual teenagers are getting really annoyed with publishers because like, we want stuff that's for teenagers. Like, we're teenagers. Like, can you make a new category? It's a big controversy people will argue about. But at the end of the day, so I released it as that way. And then when I came back to read it again, like this past year, I was like, no, like this is a young adult story. Like, yes, this one element is more mature, but everything else about it, like the vast majority of its tone and its perspective and its heart fits in the young adult category. So I recategorize it. If you look at it on Amazon and stuff like that now, it is currently now categorized as young adult, as like upper young adult. But just to show, like, just to kind of reiterate why this really is, it very much is a crossover kind of a novel. I was doing some promotions for it in June, and there was this one website where it was asking, you know, okay, what category is it? I put young adult, and then it was like, and then it had this very strict system for figuring out kind of like the content warnings of the story. And so I answered it as conservatively as I could. I really thought carefully about how I answered all their questions. And then when it gave, you know, I submitted it and it gave me the rating and it said mature. I was like, okay. So it's a teen book or is it mature? Yes, apparently is the answer. But yeah, that
I almost think it should be called like young adult dark fantasy or young adult dark world.
I do call it dark fantasy. That's usually how I categorize it. Young adult, upper young adult dark fantasy, I think is probably the most accurate way to describe it. Yeah.
Well, and also the absence of adult POV characters. You know, they're all the characters are generally the same age. I think that was another one. Like George R.R. Martin, he has young characters. But then, you know, a second later, you're with, you know, Jaime Lannister, who's not dealing with coming of age stuff at all. He's in the thick of it, you know. So I would say that's another element, that it is the characters themselves are confined to a certain age group.
Oh, I should mention another thing too. Actually, it had two things. It was the adult nature and also the length. Usually, something this long you're not supposed to have something this long for teenagers. But
this exceeds the TikTok time frame.
I think there are absolutely young readers that would enjoy something that long. And you should have seen the stuff I read as a teenager. Yeah. I read like I had a whole shelf of stuff this big. It was like a series. It was like 8 books and like
man, I'll tell you one of my notes, and I never came to a conclusion on this was, you know, I'm like, should Brianna have tried to break this down into smaller books or made it more easy or more accessible? And I want to say yes to that from a marketing standpoint, that, yeah, you should have found a way to make this more accessible.
The publisher probably would have told me that.
But having read it, there is a certain epic nature to the story that I think if you did break it down, you might have lost that. So it's weird. It's like, I feel like this is the story you meant to tell. And that is kind of the deciding factor on whether you should have done this or not, meaning you should have written it large. But man, it feels like because of it, it made it very hard to get to from a marketing standpoint. So it's just, it's in that middle zone. However, if you can sustain with sequels a good run and maybe find ways to introduce the world, maybe even through short story. I think people, if they got onto this, especially the avid readers who will sit there and plow through, like you just said, books this size, I think they'll be warmly rewarded for their efforts. I feel like this book holds up very well. It did not strike me as an amateur effort by a writer who wrote a first book. It felt very full, very complete, very thick in its world building and the terminology, especially the words you made up, like ote and God, there's so many, but there's a bunch of words you use in there that worked very well. And so I don't know, it feels like a complete work. It has that epic quality that if you're looking for that, this book has it. It's got that fullness that you would want. And I don't say that lightly because I've read a ton of books. As someone who is an avid reader, I cannot tell you how many times I've judged a book by the cover. I'm like, ooh, man, this looks great. And by the third page, I know this. I'm not going to get through it. There's no way. It's just not there. It doesn't have the horses to pull the cart. This does. It does. It's just hugely long. That's all.
That's what I wanted to create. I wanted to create an epic experience. That was what my soul was craving, I guess. I was creating what I knew I would enjoy reading. Not for everyone. Not everyone likes these books. I love big books like that. And if someone else had written it, I would have enjoyed it. So that was, as a writer, what your criteria should be, I suppose.
Well, and I played a game with myself really for the ending from part 5 on.
Okay.
Which I wasn't playing. I read it straight through until that stopping point. But as I went through, I was like, I was like, Doug, ask yourself, is all of this fluff? Is it too much? Yeah. Should she have cut this scene? And I came to the conclusion, no, or I'll say this, some maybe, but in general, no. I think all of these scenes are part of the world building and the completeness of the tale that you set out from the first chapter all the way to the end. So as big as it is, I do think you made the right call, as frustrating as it might be from a sales point of view, to go ahead and put this all together in a, 108 chapter or 109 chapters. I think this is the story. I think this is a correct book. So yeah, maybe there are just some other marketing issues to think of. And I'm not trying to make, I know you don't care so much how much money you make right now necessarily.
Not yet.
But I am thinking about what would it take to get this book into as many people's hands as possible.
Well, they need to trust me, so I need to have other books that are shorter and easier and more.
That's true. Well, that will help. That will help. But I think there may be other ways too to sell this book and get other people to read it, because I do think it'd be a rewarding read for tons of people.
Oh, maybe after the chat, I should get some of your thoughts on that, because I'm not, again, like the strategy with self-publishing is usually like you have a backlog and then you start to.
Well, they say that you don't sell your first book until you finish your third.
Yeah.
It's funny. Even now with Heroines Labyrinth, and these are two completely different genres, by the way, completely different genres. Heroines Labyrinth and Faraway Birds. Yeah. I am still selling more Faraway Birds this year than last year, and it's got to be because of the Heroines Labyrinth. So it is true. The more you write, the more people trust you, and they will take a chance on your book.
Yes. So whatever they call that, buy through. What is it? Something through sales where they buy one and then you didn't have to market the rest, right? So it becomes the more you buy, the cheaper it becomes to get new customers, because you only had to advertise one book and then they on their own volition chose to get more.
Right. It's trust. You have
right.
built trust. If a reader, like if you wrote a second book, I'll read it. Right. Because I know what I'm in for. I know the quality. Like you've earned my trust as a single reader. And I think that's true with a lot of people. If they trust you as the author, they will. I mean, why not spend $20 and see where the next one goes, right? I mean, why not?
Right. Why don't we talk? You sent me on the subject of theme. You sent me a text-based interview you did on a blog about the theme of trauma. So why don't we talk about trauma in this story? I've got a few different things that are related to that, and probably some of the things that you brought up are connected to that as well. So why don't you talk about the importance of trauma in this book?
I'm trying to remember what we haven't already, because I know we talked about it last time too. But I'll in general, maybe let's try to see if I remember what was in that.
Well, no, you said you had a better answer. I think when you
no, I mean it was somewhat for that, but I was also for another question you had asked me, which I might pull up another interview and just read what I said for that one at some point. But yeah, I would say So I'm remembering that article. One of the things that was kind of a pet peeve of mine while I was working on this book is the way that trauma is portrayed sometimes in fantasy, where again, we touched on this. I don't want to go into too much depth, but sometimes it's used, especially for like female characters, pretty cringe. Sometimes it's used as like a
plot device,
or a opportunity for someone to become stronger and to grow. It's like, what if this person was sexually assaulted, for example, and then we use that as character growth, which is disgusting in so many levels, and it's not how that works psychologically at all. And I just trauma is, like I said before, it's messy. It's once you've been traumatized, now you have to heal from the trauma. That in of itself doesn't make you stronger. It's what you do when you heal from that, and what choices you make in that healing that can lead to strength and growth. It can also lead to someone becoming, much more bitter. It can lead to dark feelings, as we've seen in this book. And so I wanted to try to honor the authenticity of that, since it is such a common experience too. Like trauma is a pretty common experience. So I don't know if that was
So what when you're talking about trauma, and what are you talking about? What does trauma mean to you?
Didn't we already have this conversation last time?
Did we? Okay.
I think we did.
Okay.
Well, I will say this from a writing standpoint. One of the things about trauma is that a lot of times it's hidden. And so there's no real outlet for it, and then you just bear it, or your character is just bearing it. So it's like a private scar, and there's and there's been no punishment on the person. There's that person has gotten away with it, and there's something psychologically really terrible about that, because it goes on day after day after day after day after day after day. So that by itself is. I was talking one person who left a rating on Faraway Bird. She's like, "Thank you for not just making it bad memories," and that has always stuck with me, because a lot of stories do just be like, "I remember the day that this person did this terrible thing," and I remember. It's not just bad memories. There's a psychological component, and it festers and it gets more complex. It's like a kaleidoscope when you twist it, so it gets worse and worse and worse. So.
It's it's like a rewiring of your brain wires. That was redundant, but it's like you're thinking in different ways as a result of trauma, and you're interacting with the world around you in different ways, and you're perceiving threats that may or may not be there. Even
observing, you might be perceiving threats that aren't there, or ignoring
hyperacting, like being really reactive to ones that are
right, or even. Sometimes envying confidence in somebody. Like obviously nothing bad has happened to that person.
That's a thing.
So there's a lot of little things, or that could be a thought. I'm just saying evaluating whether or not you feel like someone has a leg up because they've never had to deal with this, that they get to glide through life in a way. So like there's a lot to it. It's a pretty multifaceted component. And like you said, as you grow up, as you get older, it changes, and it can get worse. So, the only reason I jumped in there is because I think you said you answered that last time, but that was just one answer I wanted to throw out there as well.
Yeah.
What traumatizes people in your book, and how do they deal with that? We've got situations where they are dealing with different traumas, right? But sometimes they're dealing with the same ones.
Yes, and they're all related to, some element of it's a trauma that's, well, I guess most of the time it's something caused by someone else. I suppose losing an arm is a little bit more of a natural disaster situation going on.
Well, monster combat can be pretty traumatic.
Yes. Although it's complicated for casting because it's also associated with positive things in his life, but that's also of course a traumatic experience. But for him it's going to be one, and he was beaten as a child by his slave master. Yeah, and slavery in general, the whole experience. Some bullying that we have at the beginning. Losing the arm. With Kindy, it's I would say part of it is just the. I guess the wings, the discovery of the wings was kind of a mildly traumatic experience, but so was her interaction, both for interactions with Charris, especially the second one at the midpoint is a very important part of the story for her, because that's when she sort of changes her perspective of the world because of what's happened to her, and she has this idea in her head that things have been set wrong, and there's one thing she has to do, and that's going to make everything feel better. Like that's going to set the world right. Which is, of course, having her revenge. She believes that that's going to be the only thing that's going to bring peace, which, of course, is not true. And then with Lucia, it's going to be, her childhood experiences of abuse as well, be the main thing, I would say. I think with her, I don't know if I would say her other experiences were strictly traumatic, but they were, still part of her character. Because so at that midpoint, right, where we have Kindy with her, losing the claws and all of that, with her captivity with Charris, and with Lucia, that's around the same time when she finds out that her father has died, and that was her goal, right? Like her goal was to free him, and she realizes it's too late, and he's already been, brutally killed by the state. And so for her, she has a massive shift in that moment too, but hers is more positive. She becomes focused, and she takes up the mission that she's been kind of afraid of this whole time, that she's been, she gets her, that sense of, focus, I suppose. And she finds resolve. Yeah, that's a good word. But yeah, so those would be the three things with each of those characters. But one of the things I want to mention, just real quickly, because with categorizing trauma, I think it's a helpful thing to think about it as it's some sort of danger, right? You've experienced something that either was dangerous or it felt dangerous, and so that's what's reworked in your brain is now trying to avoid that same risk, the same danger happening to you again. Is a lot of how I would say trauma manifests itself. So it can be avoiding situations, or just interacting with situations in different ways than you did before, in order to, and it's being triggered is like fight, flight, or freeze response essentially. So because it's a danger.
There's usually a shock factor involved.
Mm-hmm.
What about exploring the responses that the different characters have to killing people?
Yeah, we talked about this one already too. We did. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe we didn't talk about it in depth. I don't remember. But because that a lot of that was based in research from the book on killing, where there's a lot of interviews with real, combat veterans who had killed, and I took a lot from their stories. And pretty much each of the characters when they kill for the first time, it's like almost like word for word almost of like a true story, of course adapted to that character, but like I was drawing very much from that. But it also changes, like with Lucia, of course, the first time is pretty horrible for her, but she becomes accustomed to it, especially because it's, it's helping her with her ultimate goal. And yeah, so it changes there. I thought one of the things I thought was really interesting, in the book that I incorporated in is very, very common for a lot of people, is this sort of, first there's fear, the sense of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to live up to it. Like, it's a fear of incompetence, right? Like, am I going to be able to do this thing I've been trained to do? And then when there's success, there's first elation and excitement and like, I did it, and this sense of accomplishment. And that usually is also accompanied by some sort of like self-disgust or like, well, why do I feel good right now? I just killed someone. That's a very common set of emotions that people will go through. And so I incorporated that in different ways for the different characters, especially like when at the first time. But yeah, Lucia ends up having quite a lot of death at her hands. So it does shift. Her mindset on that shifts quite a lot to deal with that.
Okay. Well, now here's another topic that we probably already talked about. I don't know. Maybe. But I had it written down here that I wanted to talk about the importance of bodily mutilation.
The importance of bodily mutilation. Explain your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
This comes up a lot in the story. This idea of bodily mutilation and also self-inflicted mutilation. We deal with self-inflicted mutilation here, right? Where does that come from?
What do you mean? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, it happens to several different characters that we have scenes, where we're talking about not just violent scenes, but we're talking about a permanent disfigurement, actually, of the body that comes up. So I guess this could go with trauma, that when this happens to you, you describe the scene where Kindy tries to cut her wings off, what happens to her when she's tortured, we're talking about, permanent physical disfigurement, injury that's lasting. That's not, that's not a light topic to be inflicting on these characters. So what's the allure? Oh, we got more fabulous hair. What's the allure of that? What's the allure of that?
The allure? I don't know if there's an allure. Apparently I can't say that word.
Well, and sometimes the recurrent nature of something could be unconscious, or I should say subconscious.
No, that's probably if there is a reason for that. That is probably subconscious. I'm not sure.
Well, I will say this. Actually, let me find. Here, keep talking. Let me find something.
The guy who, we have one character who has a catastrophic amputation of a limb,
right?
And we don't fix this through magic. We don't do anything like that. That's not happening. This is now something that's permanent, that is going to have to be dealt with. And when I'm talking about allure, like, why write about war or violence or things like that? The people are drawn to. I thought there might be something, because obviously, we were talking about representing. Are we talking about representing ideas very physically? We're talking about a permanence. We're not talking about a wound you're healed from, or something.
I have some insight on that.
Okay, all right.
Why it may be subconsciously added, not necessarily by. I don't think it's a Brianna thing, is what I'm trying to say. I believe it's part of two things that we've discussed pretty clearly. One, it makes sense for a coming of age story if the world is R-rated. So check this out. Now, this comes from a great book about the hero's journey, by the way, called Star Wars: The Magic of Myth, written by a woman, Mary Henderson. And this is called Into the Belly of the Beast. Okay, this is archetypal. So the passage of the threshold to the spiritual and emotional transformation, that's coming of age, often requires a form of self-annihilation. In this transition, the physical body of the hero or heroine, I added that, may be slain or dismembered.
Mm.
So anyway, and then it analyzes Star Wars a little bit, but it's discussing. So like Caston loses the arm, right? Did he lost it quite literally from an animal, right?
Yep.
The Policius, how do you pronounce that?
The Policius, yeah, which is an
So-
animal which I would say consciously I did say that it's supposed to represent kind of like the manifestation of his slavery. That's what that's like, that thing is like his slave master. It's this big looming thing that seems impossible to slay.
Well,
yeah.
It's called the belly of the beast in terms of the archetype. It's the same, getting your hand bitten off. These are primal fears. And so when you dream or when you write, that primal fear of change, especially spiritual or inner change, can manifest as dismemberment, like Luke Skywalker getting his hand lopped off by Vader. So, and Kindy, by the way, those are bat wings, also animal. There's an animal manifestation there. So again, belly of the beast. This is more of a monster that's trying to harm you. So there could be, I think there is an archetypal relationship between the idea of damage, like you said, permanent damage or disfigurement or deformation of the self in a spiritual transformation. So I honestly see that as related. I think Brianna did a coming of age in which spiritual transformation is part of coming of age. But she did it in a brutal R-rated way in which the dismemberment side of it, whereas a lot of writers who are avoiding the R-rated or let's say the brutal world would definitely not do that. Disney would not do that. Disney would be like, why don't she lose the necklace? We'll have the necklace. So I feel like there is a correlation there in a harsh world that's coming of age. The dismemberment archetypes make a lot of sense to me. And that's more of a hero's journey archetype, by the way.
That makes sense. I'll go with that one. How about that? How's that for an answer?
Well, I just find it fascinating that you pointed out this recurrent theme.
That's not something I noticed or thought about.
Well, yeah, well, it is. It was there on the two levels. That first of all, okay, yes, you have the dismemberment, bodily disintegration. Lazia's father, that's
capital
Lasia.
Lasia.
No, Lasia. I think I got it right once, but I got
Lasia's
father is there. This comes up a lot. So one way is to avoid that. Okay, well, I'm going to tell a fantasy story, but I'm going to avoid that. The other way is to, okay, maybe it happens, but it's not dwelt on. But it was dwelt on here, and so it's shown. You're not looking away. You show it, and the audience sticks with it. Let's see. A Sable Phoenix for $10 says trauma is caused by pain, which is tied to the perception of mortal danger, whether or not that's true. It's then ingrained into the subconscious, creating a survival response to situations that trigger that same emotional package. It doesn't matter if the response was actually responsible for your survival. The subconscious is nonverbal and non-temporal. It's just, this happened to you, this happened to me, and I survived. So this response is the proper response to the things that make me feel the same way.
Well, I would say, just to add to that, he said a mortal, how do you word it? Mortal.
A perception of mortal danger.
Mortal danger. I would add possibly existential danger. And the reason I want to add that is because it seems like the more the research comes in, social settings are terrifying to people. So social existentialism is a very powerful reaction in people.
I would say the reason why that is because that is a life or death situation, not necessarily in a modern day context, but in the environment we evolved in.
That's why I wanted to add the word. Right.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to add the word existential, existence. There's something threatening my existence. socially, spiritually, physically, and all of those, I think Sable's right, register as a package of fight, flight, or freeze, and those that stays in there.
Because we're dependent, we're not like we're not animals that can really survive very well on our own. We're dependent on being in a group, and if you're expelled from a group, that could be death. So like to be accepted is very, very important, and that's why it's terrifying to like not fit in or things like that. Things that are like, well, why does that give us so much anxiety? Well, that's why. I mean, we're wired to prioritize that very much as if our life depends on it, because I think on a certain level it would have been dependent on that.
Yeah, and I would we are hardwired socially. I just watched something. Sable and I we watched a video, and they were talking about how humans are wired to respond and I've seen these on videos, by the way, like little TikTok videos that pop up where two people are walking and one person just goes, ah, ah, and they just start panicking. The other person starts panicking. Nothing's happening. But we see that visual cue and we respond. So social cues are massive. Survival. That's a massive survival apparatus in our brain. So I do think that social exile, as Sable just said, is a form of survivalism. So if you're wounded socially in a severe way, that, especially if it's an invisible wound, these things are really hard to heal, right? You can't see it. No one sees it. No one knows. No justice was it. So yeah, I do think that plays a big role.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys mind?
Okay, let's talk.
I need to put something away. I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Casey Robinson, the shaky shooter, mentions Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. That is another very memorable character with dismemberment as part of the character arc for that person, Lieutenant Dan, as well.
Yes,
and he's great Lieutenant Dan in that movie.
Yeah, reinvent himself, move on, missing his legs, but ultimately making a happy existence. Yes, so that is an example. Yeah, I guess I was thinking about you've seen True Detective.
Which season?
The first season, the only real season.
The best one. The first one was the best season.
Yeah. So like that's one that deals with some when we're talking about violence, or particularly we're talking about gore. There are some scenes in there that could potentially have gone very much in that direction, but the showrunner was talking, but they always cut away. They don't actually show it. That it's implied that it's there, because that's one way to go. Because the showrunner said something like, this is not an exact quote, but it was something like, I'm not really interested in the gore and the watching the disintegration or the visualization of that. So that was there, like the guy that's on the strap to the bed and things like that. And there was the child that was in the microwave and things like that. So that's like, okay, that was there, but it was not going to show you the physicality of that.
That's the author. That's the storyteller's discretion. What is it that does the storyteller want to bring something awful and bring it right up close to you in a cerebral way, or are they trying to suggest it and move on to something else? Different storytellers have different thresholds and also different aims on what they're trying to demonstrate for you in the story.
Yeah, and
I had to make I had to make the call in my book. I could have easily skipped some major scenes in there due to the discomforting nature of them. That wasn't my aim. My aim was to maximize that discomfort in a realistic way. So it's really up to the storyteller where they want to go. And by reading Brianna's book, I definitely got the sense that she, again, maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously even, wanted the reader to feel the harshness of the world as something that was hard to evade, that it was going to come up close to you,
No, I think for the same reason that in your book that is something you can't look away from. It's kind of for the same reason, right? Because for your character, she has a traumatizing experience, and that's important to understand as we go through this story and understand where she's coming from and stuff like that. And so,
well, and looking away became a crime, like a secret crime for her. Like people who look away, who ignore what's happening, like that. That so don't look away was kind of one of the messages of the book. Don't look the other way, so that the story doesn't, in a way. But I sense some of that in your book as well, Brianna. Even though it's got young adult themes, the story itself is very harsh, and I thought effectively so.
So when we're following these different character arcs, another thing that they're dealing with different trauma, sometimes the same, like dealing with death, killing someone, and then how do they respond? They've had different things that have caused trauma early that they are dealing with. But as a result, you also have several characters who deal with revenge.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge theme in this.
Yes. I would love to go ahead and why don't I go ahead and share some of my thoughts here on the character arcs at large, if that works for you guys, because I think
that's perfect. All right. So we
yes. Because one of the things that we were talking about last time, and I was like, let's save that for later, has to do with the theme and how that's expressed in all these different characters. And so basically, when I say all these three, it's mainly the Kasten, Kindy, and Lucia. I would say the other characters, even though Jensen does have a point of view, are really supporting characters to their arcs in many ways. So basically, they all are having a different response to what is arguably a comparable level of like trauma, abuse, victimhood. And those three, it's basically a different type of arc for each of them. One of the things that I love, I think I was talking about this last time, is I love stories about change. I'm just really intrigued by watching a character, transform from one type of person to another. That's something that is endlessly fascinating to me. So there's, obviously there's a positive element of change that's happening for each of these characters. It's coming of age. So they're all coming from some level of weakness and coming into strength. And there's an element that we can all root for each of them in that way. But there's also moral implications of some of these changes as well. Let me start with Kasten. So I would say Kasten's is just a pure positive arc. So, because
it's always fun to lose your hand. Or your
positive when I'm talking about the moral side.
I'm totally kidding.
Right. On the invisible side, of things.
Right. So he, at the beginning, he has a bully who bullies him. Whatever. We don't need to review that
in the
scene.
Town where he's from.
Exactly. And he has an opportunity kind of early in the story to have revenge against this person, who, was very cruel to him. It was a very bad situation.
What was that guy's name again?
Salo?
Yeah, that's right.
Salo, yeah. And so he has a chance to have revenge, and he does. And he takes it. He does a pretty dark thing. He's a physician, but he allows a wounded man to die on the battlefield because, as revenge, basically. And it haunts him. It really bugs him. And he later on is in a very similar chance again, a very similar situation where he sees his slave master is, basically needs help on a battlefield. And he's like, he could just let him die. And he ends up saving him as a way to, get his freedom. But it's also that he is changed. He wants to make a different choice. And the
backfires.
The bad guy still gets what he deserves. It just isn't by his hand. And so he gets to have a clean conscience then, and he gets what he wants and what he needs, right? He gets to be free, and he's no longer the solitary character that he was at the beginning. He now has a friend group. He now has, and I would say one of the things that Kasten has to learn in the story is his own worthiness, his own value. He has to come to believe that he's not only that he wants freedom, but that he's worthy of it, that he's worthy to be.
Worthiness is a major psychological thing for a lot of male characters.
And so so all of his is a positive arc, right? He gets what he wants and what he needs. Let's see, should I say Kindy's next? Let's see. Let's go to Kindy's, because hers is the more negative tragic arc, right? She ends up getting what she wants, which is to kill Charris, but she loses what she needs, which she also is someone, because this is another thing that's important about trauma, is like recovery is not a solitary experience. It's usually you need support, you need people around you, right? Caston gets that. Kindy has the opportunity for that kind of community, but she chooses not to rely on them in the ways that she should. She chooses to keep her, when they are discouraging her from her revenge, she decides just to kind of keep her plans away from them. And this is actually a John Truby technique, if you can believe this, from his other book, which I liked a lot more. He had a suggestion in there about how if you have a character that basically makes a moral, whatever, like a negative moral change, that it's good to have a character call out their negative behavior or their beliefs. And so Jensen fulfilled that. There's a point where he just calls her out and he's like, can't you see it's just revenge at this point? Like, it's no longer about, becoming free, or it's no longer about, having justice and stuff like that. She is just pursuing revenge. And she has plenty of opportunities to not do this. But this is what she chooses. And of course, the consequence is that she loses Lucas. And he ends up dying as a direct result of her pursuing that, which leaves her at the end in a much worse state mentally, rather than in a better state that she was expecting to have.
Well, and that who is it that Karina, I think, kind of calls her out, like, it is your fault. And during the funeral, right? And they're kind of that was Jensen. That was her brother.
Karina tries to be like, you can't put that on yourself. But right. Jensen is not happy. This is
my favorite
friend.
part of that is
he's the one that told her. He's like, don't do this, and she does that. So yes, that's
it was an unspoken or semi-spoken accusation, which was accurate. My favorite part of that is when they apologize to each other, and she realizes that he apologizes for the problem, but not for what he said, and she noticed that, and that really bothered her. Or it didn't bother. It stalked her a little bit, I guess, mentally.
Yeah, we might say that issue is not yet resolved. It comes out in
like
chapter 1 in the next book, actually, in a pretty explosive way. But spoilers. So I shouldn't talk about that one because that's the first draft. But yes, that's those two, is their relationship is very important in the next book. But anyway, so then we have Lucia's. Lucia's is a bit more complicated. Hers is kind of a mix. She's one that I intentionally left, I guess, a little bit open to interpretation on how much of hers is a positive arc as opposed to a negative arc. But I think, objectively, it is still some of both. So at the end, she did start to kind of be more vindictive in her rebellion, but there was a moment at the very end when she turns back before her arc could become more tragic. She ends up kind of bouncing on that edge, and she sees a young girl whose father that she's about to execute, and makes her think of herself when she was a young girl, when she lost her father, and so she has an act of mercy instead.
So that would be a fragile power moment, actually.
Oh, that's cool. I hadn't thought about that. And so she gets some of what she needs, but not all of it. She gets what she wants. Well, okay. She fails to get the first thing she wants, right? There's that mid-back set point. I said that wrong. It's midpoint setback. I've switched those words around.
Okay.
And so she does not free her father, which she then changes that, or kind of adjusts it into a new goal, which she does achieve. So I'm just looking at my notes. So she also, like Kindy, like Caston, one of her needs was that of community. And she loses some of that. She has a cost, which is her friendship with Kindy is damaged because of some of the ways that she went about getting her goal. Let's see what I wrote here. So there's still some unresolved character arcs, which is why there is a second book, even though the plot of this one is fully satisfied, and you can read this and be satisfied. But there is some more stuff that I want to do with these characters. One of the things that Lucia still needs is to let go of her need to feel powerful and strong all the time. This is kind of her trauma response, is to be like, I've always got it, allow herself to be open and vulnerable with others, to develop meaningful relationships. She starts to have this with Kindy, but then she doesn't get it completely. And she had that psychological need to believe in herself, to become truly strong, not just to put up a front of strength, in a word to find her courage. And she does get that. That is the big positive side of her arc. So those were sort of the conscious choices behind these characters and their changes, and both the positive and negative, and why there's still more that I want to explore with them as characters.
Okay, so that's 3 characters that you just described their arc, and they're all got point of view throughout here. And so that's what I was talking about.
And they're all comparing to each other. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. They're comparing to each other.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Right.
Well, right. So they should be complementary. So they're dealing with, they should be complementary and be dealing with the same kind of theme, and then be interwoven.
Mm-hmm.
So you're hitting points at about the same time, but you're also saying that they're not done yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Characters they're well-written characters are always a little somewhat open-ended. Our imaginations wonder what's going to happen to them next. That's where sequels really come from. That need to know what else happens to this person or to that person. And this book definitely has that. There is a sense of completion and still the open-endedness. So I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good balance to strike. Oh, go ahead.
No. Well, I was going to move us to a topic of symbolism.
Sure.
Thank you. So we got 2. I've got 2 written down here. You want to talk about the symbolism of wings, or the meaning?
Yeah,
of wings, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's on my note too. Because we talked about that a little bit last time. There was still a little bit more to say there, which is basically, wings, which is something that I guess I don't think I was consciously really thinking about while I was writing this, which seems obvious now that Doug brought it up. Maybe I guess I did think about it a little bit, which is wings, I would say, just represents freedom.
Right.
There's that moment, which was a conscious moment early in the book, where Kindy is trying to she's having her, wrestling with the call to adventure moment, and she's sitting up on top of the roof, and she's thinking, I probably can't do that. I probably shouldn't go out. And she looks up and she sees, I can't remember if it was birds or bats. It was probably bats. That's what it should have been. But she sees something flying.
Winged creatures.
A winged creature. She watches some winged creatures fly, and they're out there. They're beyond what she can get to. That's a really common motif, is to have a character, especially in movies, watching something fly is like a visual symbol of yearning to be free. You're vicariously living through this, this flying animal. And so of course, throughout the story, she has these wings they're not fully developed, and they're growing, they're getting bigger. And this is one of the things that's unresolved, right? Is that we would expect, if her story had been completely positive, we would end in some heroic moment of her spreading her wings and flying that did not happen. That's because she is not fully free psychologically. And so that is still to come. But yes, that's what wings represent, is freedom. And to lose wings is to lose freedom. To have them damaged is to, have that, yearning be temporarily, temporarily hindered or whatnot. But
trying to remove the wings is a form of a captivity bargain, by the way, because to remove the wings is to remove the symbol of freedom and uniqueness, her own identity, part of her her own sacred fire, in the sense of she has aspirations, and she's going to try to slice part of that off, to end that. And it also shows an attempt to reconcile the conflict with her native culture, which does not like different. They don't like people with wings. That's a bad thing. So that is a full-fledged captivity bargain in the sense that she's attempting to reconcile the pressures with her native culture and also subdue the self. And since we just established that wings represent freedom, her trying to cut off the wings is her putting herself into captivity at that point. And I think the Dathel plays a little bit of a role there as well.
Oh, do tell.
Well, because it's her coping with pain on some level. But also, I think the Dathel might also represent a poisoned apple since it's ingested. But I'm curious, your story so well. I'd be very curious to hear your take on some of this. It'd be very fun to hear you analyze it.
Yeah, we were going to just talk about the point. That's the other symbol I got here. So you brought poison apple.
Yeah,
so
and that's something I wrote here is that last time we talked, Doug, you said I don't know if you remember, but you said you had a prediction regarding the Dathel because of the poison apple archetype. There was something that you were thinking might happen at the end, but you weren't sure.
Let me check my notes.
See if you remember it, because I'm curious to know if it happened or not, because that could be interesting.
Oh my God, I did make a prediction, didn't I? Shoot.
You don't remember what it was, do you?
I might have to. I'll tell you what, if I don't remember during the stream, I'll go back, I'll rewatch the first discussion, and I'll revisit it.
Yeah, and you didn't make the prediction. You just said, I have one, but I'm going to keep it to myself. So now I guess we'll never know.
Stupid. Why would I do that? Unless I wrote it down in my notes. I might have some notes here. Sable just sent in a...
Sable did. Let's see what Sable says. Sable for $10. Thank you very much, Sable. Sable says, even though I haven't read the book yet, I love how you talk about the conscious symbolism you have in the visuals, events, and characters. Doing that without sacrificing verisimilitude is a feat, especially for a first novel.
Thank you. Yeah, I love symbolism. It's one of my favorite literary devices, which probably I overuse sometimes because sometimes my symbolism is something that I've as I've been working under Cameron's mentorship, I find that sometimes my symbolism ends up being too subtle, and it's like if it's gonna be there, you might as well make it like actually noticeable more. I'm like, but I want to leave it as a for the super fans that analyze it really in depth, I want to give them presents. I want to give them, which I still do. I still like to do both. It's like there's things here that you may find if you look really closely. That's just for you. But yeah, it's like
I don't have my prediction written down in my notes. I have extensive notes here. I don't see it.
That's too bad.
Oh man! But I said it had to do with the Dathel.
So let me see if I can remember what you said. You were talking about maybe I can try to trigger your memory. You were talking about how there was a different version of the poison apple archetype if it's being self-ingested, because you're saying it's a poison apple situation, but she's doing it to herself, and you thought that was interesting and meaningful potentially for reasons you didn't say. I'll
go back and rewatch. I bet if I rewatch, I can recover the memory. But oh man, that's driving me nuts.
But that is, I don't know how we've talked about that in a great depth. So this is self. So is that what you also identified the Dathel with the poison apple, Brianna? So this is a self-ingested poison apple.
I guess.
You had not.
Well, so typically a poisoned apple is delivered by the Minotaur archetype, which for her is Charris, for Kindy. So it would be something that Charris delivers to her that alters puts her into an unconscious state or captures her in some way, and it's often something internal. That's usually how it breaks down. So she's the one who stabs him, though. That's an internal, because stabbing is an internal. I always hate saying the word penetration, but there is something that goes from the outside to the inside,
right? And
it's a malevolent thing. It's a bad thing, and it alters the state of the heroine typically. Does Charris capture her at some point? I know he does early in the story. I know the last part that I read the last time, he actively captures her, and she's actually in a pure captivity situation. In that like palace, was it the palace or the
in the
right, and that's classic right there. Damn, I want to remember what my prediction was. Anyway,
I want to know too.
I know I've got like two competing thought lines going on, and one's canceling the other one out on me. Anyway, Charris would have to deliver something to her in bad faith. So, and it's also, this is a pretty big book, so it's not like the theme can actually manifest itself multiple times if story keeps going. So it's, part of me is even wondering, by the way it ends, if she reverses that, because she obviously runs him through a couple times.
Once or twice.
yeah. So, but that's a reversal. And by the way, I have notes similar to that with Theodora in subsequent books, how I want her guy to go. So anyway, it matters. Those symbolic things matter.
Yeah, I'm gonna, if I can talk just briefly about that scene. I just also mentioned before that, before she finally does kill him, he does like he doesn't stab her exactly. He like throws a
knife at her.
Yeah. So there's that. But of course it doesn't stop her, because we planted already and we're paying off that if you stab someone there, they might still come after you.
Right.
But yeah, that moment was one, when we're talking about like dark themes of the story and not letting the audience look away. That was another choice where it's like, okay, this is a very horrible revenge. She basically tortures him to death to get back at him. It's like, are we going to show all this? Yes. And I'd be curious to know if you had this experience reading it, but almost create a bit of a conflicted feeling too, because it's like, this guy deserves it, and there's maybe a part of you that's like looking forward to him dying too, and so we're with her, and it's like, we're rooting for her to have this goal, and then to have the moment of horror, like, oh, did I just root for that? Like, oh, did like that but I think probably a lot of readers are also being, as they're reading it, they're having a little bit of a, okay, Kindy, so like I was kind of going for that like conflicted feeling, so that
I would say that it had that effect on me. I mean, there were even times where with her in particular, and with Lycia, did I say that right?
Almost. Really close. It's Lycia. This is I forgot to put it as, like, I was supposed to put the little description in my
yeah,
how to say that name.
Conscious there. What was I saying? Oh yeah, there's a couple times where I was like, man, this is almost borders sadism a little bit, the way it's written, a real joy of killing. So yeah, there was definitely some conflicted thoughts while reading it on where the moral compass, which way it was pointing there.
Because I want you to understand how these characters, like, even when you don't agree with them, like, I want you to understand them. I want you to understand why it is that they're doing what they're doing, and why they're feeling what they're feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I like, Sable's got a super chat we'll get to in just a moment, but I like to counter stories where, like, okay, you could tell the story where she decides that in the end revenge is not worth it. That could be the arc here, and she's not going.
That would be really unsatisfying.
She's going to do
How did
something
Lucas
else.
get stabbed?
Lucas, he was just in battle. Like, he was a single combat with someone else while she went to go get Charris, so she didn't.
That's what I thought.
She decided not to help him.
That might be a bit of a poisoned apple in a sense, since he was the one that was run through, or because like you said, it's something that affects her. It stays with her. Anyway, keep going. I'm just thinking out loud. Go ahead. I'm totally interrupting.
Yeah, she decided to not help her, not help him in order to pursue her revenge, and then she does that. but stories. Oh, what? Don't take revenge, or hey, how about don't have a final battle? Like one of my that I go back to, a story from my childhood was the Knight and the Dragon. It was almost a picture book. I may have told this story before, and I absolutely loved everything about this book. Early book that I encountered, because it starts off that once upon a time there was a knight who had never fought a dragon, or a knight who lived in a castle who had never fought a dragon, and then it goes over to the mountains, and it says, and in the mountain cave or whatever, there was a dragon who had never fought a knight, and so they decide to schedule a fight, and you get throughout the book, which is short. But the knight is making his armor, he's painting his shields, he's polishing his lance, he's sharpening his swords, he's doing everything to get ready for this fight. The dragon is practicing making his eyes turn red and breathing fire and burning mannequins of knights and flying and getting ready for this. And then in the end, they try to fight, but the princess shows up and basically scolds them, and they decide to open a hot dog stand together instead. And I loved everything about that book, but how it ends. There's the message there was something about, oh well, don't fight, don't kill each other, whatever. But I always wanted to see those two fight. I was like, no, this whole thing is about
if you have all this anticipation.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that scene in Braveheart where the armies are running at each other, and then they meet in the middle, like, hey, buddy. He's the Irish. But,
well, yes, but that's a bit different. That's still a bit different because you're still paying off the fight against the English, or if somebody decides that, oh no, so this is not that. So this does not do that. You go all the way through to the revenge. And in the style of the story, don't look away here. And then what does that do to you?
Right. Which is a lot more narratively satisfying, right? I'm not gonna have this whole lead up to something with that much anticipation and just be like, maybe we should, maybe after all, I will just go and pursue justice in a more normal way. You'd be like, oh, that's lame. That's, that would be frustrating.
That's the ABC ending.
And that's one of the reasons why, by the way, I love tragedies, even though this isn't purely a tragedy. It has tragic elements, obviously, because that's another way to give the same message that I think sometimes actually is stronger, because negative, we tend to, how you could have 10 people praise you on something and then one person says you suck, and that's what you remember. Our brains pay attention sometimes to negative things more so than positive things, and if you really want to drive a point home, sometimes doing it in a negative way, in a negative arc or in a tragic story, it sticks with you more. You're inclined to think about it more, I think.
Game of Thrones is a case study in negative outcomes, negative emotions.
For the wrong reasons.
Keep you turning the page.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the ending. I know. I just mean No.
I mean what you're talking about, which is instead of giving the satisfying outcome, you give the most unsatisfying, most negative outcome. And people are like, oh man, I hate this story. Oh man. And then they just keep flipping pages. They're totally sucked into it.
I'm when I'm talking about is from a moral, moral arc perspective. When we're dealing with a moral question in a story, obviously you can have the positive ending, and that's, we're all just like, oh yay, sweet. And you kind of move on with your lives. But for me, anyway, it's just, maybe even just personally, the stories that deal with the, really important moral issues from a negative way, by showing someone do the wrong thing and then showing the consequences, that's so much more intriguing to me personally. It leaves a bigger impact, which is why I write stories like that. Sometimes I do not always write tragic stories, but it is something I do sometimes, because it just makes the point a lot stronger, in my opinion. And it's not an option. It's an option that you can avoid the issue we just talked about of leading up to something and then not delivering. There's another way to give the same message.
or you coming to the end and you're like, actually, I can't really go in that direction. I'm, for outside pressures. Oh, I'm gonna have to turn this to the
yeah. Well, WandaVision, they had this great premise, a great story, and I feel like somehow they got advised on how to handle her character, and they just mixed it up, and they got really confused by how they wanted to end that. And I think I don't think they delivered. So sometimes outside pressure can be bad. It depends. Outside advice can be really good.
Well, it can be bad. Yeah.
I've had great success. I think it's trust. If you're getting good information from people you trust, there's a relationship versus someone who just wants you to write a story to suit their, what they expect.
It has to be storytelling driven.
What's that?
It has to be storytelling driven,
Has to be.
Yeah.
Story has to be at the top of the totem pole. And the second you put something else at the top, Christian story, like when you watch a Christian movie, you're like, okay, I think I know how this is going to end, because they took storytelling and they're like, well, but it has to have this message in it. So, and we get that today with some of the DEI stuff.
And overtly. Yes.
Overtly, right. And it has to have a message, and it must be overt. Like, because you can say, all right, I'm saying this, but it's the overt part is.
Right. Well, so we see it on both sides. You see something like a Christian genre film, or like the modern DEI kind of intrusion into storytelling. It's not that either side doesn't have good stories to tell, but when you put it above storytelling, you're probably going to run into a wall pretty fast, because it's the wrong hierarchy of values. If you're telling stories, storytelling has to be the top of the chain all the time. And that's hard to do. It's hard to do these days sometimes.
We've got a
couple. Not if storytelling is what you care about most in the world, then
right. It's true, but a lot of film studios, there's groups of writers, there's committees, and I'm sure we've all been in a room.
That's genuinely not their first priority. Like, people will come out and say that. They'll be like, oh yeah, the reason why I'm here is because I really want there to be more stories of whatever identity or whatever. And it's like, that's very valid. I just can't wrap my mind around that being like my number one. That seems so empty. That's all you want to do is like.
Well, and that's why I try to point to a hierarchy of values in terms of approaching story, because it's not like I'm against these things.
No, I'm very
against it being the prime value. When you put it at the top is when you start to. It's when you start to swerve on the road,
We've got a few comments on symbolism. That I want to pull up. So Emma did say, I get what you're saying about symbolism, and it's definitely fun as a reader to get, but a lot of times symbolism is great as subconscious experience too. And maybe in the end you never really know, because if you're too subtle, maybe they are picking it up subconsciously, or maybe you're just being too subtle. Like who knows? I guess the only way you can get that is by letting other people read.
There's definitely a case for the undersell for symbol. There are things I put into Faraway Bird that I've never explained to people. It's very subtle. It's very quiet. Sometimes in this kind of a setting, like with Brianna, I'll mention, I'm like, by the way, this. And people are like, oh, I see it now. It wasn't meant to be obvious. It was meant to be subconscious, And I'm sure, Brianna, you have plenty of those in here as well, where you're not spelling it out for us.
Right.
And yet, it's there.
You are. Yes.
So Sable Phoenix for $10 says the subtle symbolism that few people recognize consciously is where you're really employing it to its strongest effect.
Right.
In my
super humble
not so
humble opinion. Nice. I like that. I've never heard that one before. I love in my not so humble opinion. I'm going to use that table. It makes me happy.
Yeah, that's the new one right there.
Good.
Because even if it's not consciously registered, it still influences the subconscious experience of the story. And again, the subconscious is nonverbal, but it makes the story feel more important. Like that song you can just barely hear through the wall that makes you cry.
Yeah, that's why I'm such a strong proponent of archetypal designs and storytelling, because if you use the design, this ancient operating system will react to it. And the only reason I know that is because the designs have worked in all these other stories. They keep popping up. And when you start to think about why, there's all these answers. You're like, oh, well, that makes sense. That's why. And there's all this stuff there when you just start to unpack it. And that's exciting to me. That's why even the dismemberment discussion we had, the belly of the beast, the primal fear of being something chewed off your arm from an animal. That's a primal level. That's level 0. Well, level 7 is spiritually something happens that is so traumatic. It's like having an animal primally chew off my arm, and it evokes change. They say that people, when you dream about losing your teeth in a dream, you're dreaming about change, because mentally you're remembering when you were a child losing your teeth and your body was changing and you were getting bigger. So your mind will bring that up again, even when you're 45 years old and suddenly you're dreaming about losing your teeth. Well, change is on your mind. So so I think what Sable said is absolutely true. A good writer, introduce it subtly, and be subtle about it, and people will react to it, whether they know why or not. They don't need to. He said it's nonverbal. So, and that's true. Your brain doesn't speak English. Your brain speaks primal responses, and we have imposed a language over the top of it. Sorry, that was a rant.
Oh, hey, Nicole is here. Hey, Nicole.
Oh, Nicole.
Good to see you.
Who's Nicole?
That's my friend.
Oh, okay.
She's another writer. She's another self-published writer, actually, and she writes.
I like her already.
Yeah, she writes historical fiction too.
I think.
I'm not sure. Like Nicole.
She had been on the General Geekdom when we were still calling this General Geekdom. She had been on. I don't know if some of her stuff has been clipped. I know that some of it's been clipped, but I'm not sure it's moved over to this channel. I still have a bunch of stuff moved over to this channel. So some of Nicole's stuff may be that. So we were just talking about the symbolism. Okay, so we went back to symbolism.
Symbolism versus like overt.
We're talking. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and I guess it depends. I was going to say, I guess you'll know. I don't know how to figure out how much is too subtle, because I've been told, okay, this is too subtle. But on the other hand, you can also think about this in terms of different media. Like I've got a scene which is intentionally supposed to be reminiscent of Mary looking at Christ on the cross, and maybe that doesn't come across at all in the writing. Maybe, or maybe that needs to be uplifted. But certainly, if it were depicted visually, I'm like, okay, well, there are iconic images of that. That visually, when that scene comes, that would need, if it were shown visually, that would need to show that.
I would add, some of it's dependent on the author discretion again. If you're making one of the major points of the story, you don't want to be so subtle that you just read past it. You want to draw attention to the moment, which by the way, Brandon does a great job of consistently, especially wrapping up multiple. And by the way, can I just say this? And this is kind of just an aside that really should be a main topic, but I think you did a great job of wrapping up multiple POV plot lines. That is something that is mishandled probably more often than not. Meaning people often botch the ending with multiple POV characters rather than get it right. I think you stuck the landing.
Thank you.
With multiple POVs in a book that's as long as it is. It could have been impossible to wrap this book up. But you did. So, but my point is, as she wrapped up every character's plot, she drew attention to some of the pivotal moments. So that you don't want to be subtle when she's killing Charris. If there's something that you don't want to be subtle in major epic moments where the story requires your attention. But if you're trying to set up, if you're trying to cue someone's mind, a reader's mind, that's when subtlety really works. You're building them up, you're setting them up for something, and you're putting it all in there, and their mind is queued up now for whatever you're going to deliver in that later chapter. It should work. Anyway, yeah. So just getting back to Brianna, excellent job wrapping this up with multiple characters, and I'm sure everyone in the chat would agree. How many times does a book have so many characters and then it's a bust because there's no way to tie up everyone's plot line? Stephen King famously runs into this problem. He has to kill off all of his characters in order to solve the problem. So you only killed off Lucas.
Yeah, and that was a direct, right? That was directly
right. That was part of.
That was it was thematically. It was a thematically thing that thematically.
Right. It was Kindy's trade. It was her unholy trade-off.
Right. It's not just because there were too
Revenge for Lucas.
Right.
I've never heard of Planet Narnia as a doctoral work by a C.S. Lewis expert that argued that Lewis employed imagery and ideas pulled straight from medieval cosmology in order to give each book in the Narnia series a unique vibe. Each book stood for one of the 7 planets. I've never heard this. It's very interesting. And he believed that the vibes would be ruined if he told anyone. Super short explanation. But I think
you
it's
told me
genius.
about this.
I've
Stuff
never
before.
heard
That's pretty cool, Emma. And by the way, it makes me think 7 planets. The planets themselves are often named after like Roman or Greek vibes there. And I don't even have to say anything to you about it. I just said Venus and Jupiter and said they're 2 different vibes, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's awesome.
Let's see.
I love that he didn't tell anybody.
The symbolism topic continues.
Sable says for $10, thank you very much, Sable. You've been very generous tonight. For $10 says, if you really want symbolism to hit hard, make it diegetic. Is that the way you pronounce that? Make the character.
I don't know what that word is. I don't know.
I don't know what that word is either. I was too embarrassed to admit it.
Stable.
I'm gonna look it up.
Occurring within the context of the story and able to be heard by the characters. The example is the music used is strictly diegetic.
That's funny because I was like, I don't know what that means, but I know I've heard that word before, and I've heard it, and now I remember I've heard it in the context of filmmaking. Yeah, we were talking about a soundtrack that's non-diegetic is just normal soundtrack, but if it's diegetic, the sound is coming from the character, the speaker in the character's car or something. Okay.
So make the character think explicitly in the same symbolic terms that you want the audience to. Humans do it all the time.
Yeah, that's why I mean. That's why I would say subtlety is great because you're almost like queuing up psychologically your reader. You're queuing them up psychologically, and if you're doing it right, you're evoking all the things that are working on that symbolic level. But when it's time to spring the trap, you don't want to be subtle. It should be, oh my God, you want the reader to react strongly to the moment, like when Kindy kills Charris. Like that's not subtle. That's overt, and the time slows down, and we walk through that internally, externally, like we're really in that moment all in. Nothing subtle about it. So I think it's just up to the author to balance subtle subconscious symbolism and cues of the psyche and versus the big reveal moments like that. And that's probably obvious, I guess.
I
have one other topic. Oh, go ahead, Brianna.
I was just gonna say I still feel like I as a writer learning that balance that like because I feel it happens all the time where I put something and I think I'm being really obvious and I'm not, or I think I'm being like it's too subtle or things are not subtle enough. It's like, okay, you're beating me over the head. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. So it seems to me that getting that balance is often
well, that's where your beta readers come in, or your sensitivity readers,
or your script consultant mentor person.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's where feedback is so important. That's why, although we, the writer, get the credit on the front page because we're driving the story, every writer secretly knows there's an army of people helping you get it right behind you.
Yeah, you can't do it all on your own. No.
And by the way, another thing you did really well, Brianna. Your acknowledgments I thought were really great. It felt very heartfelt when I read through them, as if you were talking to them directly. And so I thought you had a great acknowledgments as well.
Did you like my joke at the end?
What was the joke at the end?
Stupid joke at the end of my acknowledgments. I couldn't help it. I'm just not that. I'm just.
Oh yeah, dragons.
No, hold on. I should read it. I should read.
Yeah,
it.
you should read it, Brianna. And by the way, everybody, this is to all the dragons out there listening. This is for you.
All right, so this is at the end of my acknowledgments. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. Finally, I just want to give a shout out to dragons. Dear creatures of legend, while you played no role in this story, and I doubt I will ever write about you due to my preference for creating original creatures, you still hold such an irrevocable place in my life. I don't know where I'd be without you. Thank you. Let's see into my acknowledgements. It's so random. I don't know where I'd be without you. Let's see. Dragon.
Damn, I couldn't find it in time. I was trying to find a picture of a dragon saying thank you.
Dragon. I'm just a little bit into reptiles.
Pet dragon.
Dragon. Deceased dragon pictures on the. Anyway.
And by the way, we're up for a great House of the Dragon finale.
I'm gonna have to watch that soon.
We do have
I just finished the other show I was watching, so that's next on my list.
It's
yep.
It's slower than Game of Thrones. It's got fewer characters, but I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. It's still very well written. It's still better than almost everything else on TV. So,
Brianna,
anyway,
I've got one other topic we can talk about. I mean, you have other topics, that's fine too. But I've got one. I don't know if there's anything for you to say or not, but I wanted to give you the opportunity here because I know that in many different for many fantasy authors, I talked to Lou about this, the importance of the map.
Oh yeah,
and the geography of the world. So you mind if I share your map?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so I brought up the
yeah, I put a lot of heart and soul into my map.
Okay, yeah, okay, fantastic. Okay, so here we go. I will bring this up so that people can see right here. So this is in the front of the book, and I remember you working on this over at my bar at my house. So we have got so here is your map. So what does this map mean to you? What's the relationship to the geography? How was it developed? All that kind of stuff. What do you want to say about this?
Man, I could talk a long time about this.
Okay, good. Okay, fantastic. All right, so this is a good topic.
So I had a classic scenario with, I think, a lot of writers that are into fantasy that get into it when they're young, and that when I was 11 years old, a lot of things in my life started when I was 11. I was taking a geography class, and we were learning all these different like terms, in geography, and I was literally like just making. I was making a map. Actually, that's not the first thing. The first thing was I randomly drew a map one day. I don't know why. I don't know what possessed me. And I just kept drawing it over and over again. And I added things when I was taking a geography class like a year later. And then I got really into epic fantasy. And I mean hundreds of times. I don't know how many fucking times I drew this map over and over again. I would draw it on whiteboards. I'd draw it in my notes. I would paint it. I would do it in watercolors and in pencils, and just again and again every single time I would adjust it and make it just more what I found aesthetically pleasing. I don't know. And also I was researching and I was creating all these stories, and I was thinking about places I would like them to happen. And so, by the time I was in my 20s, I had a very big, this is about a quarter of the world that you're looking at right there. And so I had this whole map. And one day I drew it again in the, a millionth time, like this whole continent, basically this shape. And I drew it one day and I looked at it and I went, that's it. I don't know why. I had drawn it hundreds of times, and for some reason that was it. I liked that shape. And so I literally, I took a picture. I think I scanned it. I got nice and accurate. Right. And I kept that. And then when it came time to, create an official map for this story, of course, I was choosing the part of the world where the stuff happens. I literally took that sketch I had and I zoomed out and used that as my direct guide so that it was accurate to this shape that I liked, and to stuff that I learned about geography and how stuff works and whatever. Not everything here is actually completely realistic. Some of it I just did because I wanted to, but it is mostly as much as I could based in realistic understandings of how things work. And so I used I some of this is actually, most of this of what you're seeing are assets from there's this creator who created a bunch of assets for map creation, and I used those because it was stressing me out to draw it completely from scratch myself. I was being a perfectionist, in other words. And so a lot of this are from that, and then except things that I needed, like for example the canyon. I drew that because there was no such thing, and I needed it to look a very specific way. And yeah, so it's kind of designed by me. Not every piece of art is mine. There's another artist that I was using assets from that I purchased, and and so this is this is one of those things that I went way over the top with my world building, in that there's a very big world. There's quite a lot more. If anyone wants to explore some of it, there's a second map that I created. That's the whole world, and it's clickable and interactable, and that's at Neurasia.com. You can get to it there. But so there will be another map in book 2 as we go north to see some more of the world, and I'm planning 2 other stories, 2 independent stories set in this world that you will not have needed to read these Kindy and Lissy won't need to read those books in order to read them. They'll be independent other stories that will be at different periods of time in this world, and so the maps will continue to shift as political things change and empires rise and fall and whatnot. So I love history, so a lot of that is an expression of my love for history.
I got to be honest, I love drawing maps. When I was a kid, so I have ADD, so I was terrible as a student. But I would sit there and stare at like a world map in front of me for the entire class, and I memorized the entire globe, so I could draw an entire world map by memory.
That's awesome.
So of course that skill became very useful when it came to designing worlds. It is fun. It's addictive. It's like it's a rabbit hole you could tumble into and get lost.
Oh yes, I couldn't.
I think we did this when we were looking at world building, but you've got this is what's going on at Neurasia.com. So
so scroll down. I'll show you how to get to it. It's right on the right. Oh god, those ads. I need to go back into the non-ad version. Oh god, I have it's free version right now. So that's not the one. That's the one that's in the map. That's in the book.
That's
go back. There's another map. It's above that one, I think.
Right there.
That one. Yes. Yeah. I used a completely different tool for creating this map, but same base. But yeah, see, you've got this is what it looks like at the time this book is taking place. And there's the whole world. That's the big old shape of it, and all these different civilizations and cities. And if you any of the ones that are like, oh, you went out of it. What did you do?
I did.
Any of those like big black markers with the white circle. If you click on any of those, is it those ones? No, sorry, it's not that one. It's any of the. There's one but they have pictures. Oh, is it? I think it's the green ones with mountains on. Now I'm forgetting how this works. Click on. Ew. Oh no, it is. It is. Click on. Wait. This is bothering me. Some of them have pictures. I promise. Yeah, I've also spent way too much time making this. Is it the? Oh, what? There you go.
Oh, there's a picture. There's a picture.
Which one? Did you
the Midlands. There we go.
Oh, so it must be the purple ones. Okay, so the regions.
The Westfields. There we go.
Yes, yeah. So the big purple ones are the ones that show kind of like what the landscape is like there, physically. So I found pictures, just photos from our world that was kind of like how I imagine it. So that's what Karoa looks like, the area where most of this book takes place. Look at the one for the desert. Look at the desert one. The desert purple one.
Right here.
Yes. Ooh,
oh.
Desert, yes.
So bleak and hopeless. Deserts are great for liminal space.
Yes.
Let's see. Yeah, that's great. So that's at Neurasia, so you can check it out.
There's also a historical timeline on there that I created that shows you everything that's happened, all the big things that have happened in the history of this world up until the point of this book. Actually, a little bit further beyond that, but yes.
Wow. That's great. That is some serious world building.
Stable for $5.
I get it. I get the it's like I said, it's something you could do endlessly if you wanted.
It was there was a period when I was working on it was like playing a video game. Like it was the same kind of addictive nature. Like I would just do it for hours and hours. Eventually I stopped because I think that energy has been diverted into me creating new stories and new characters and new worlds. There was a while where my brain was just Neurasia.
I remember my mom was worried about me one time. Because I'd buy those big poster boards and I'd draw the maps, I'd color them in. And she's like, Doug, it's really, you have great artistic ability, but I just worry about you becoming obsessed. Like, good. Mom, you don't understand world building.
It's important.
Leave me alone.
Oh, so there was a question. What was it?
Yeah, well, okay. So we got Sable Fish says that dragons are archetypical images to humans across all epics and meridians, to quote Sagan, symbols of an alien sky.
Oh,
but then also for $5, what caused the curly tail of islands at the top right? That's actually a very rare formation. Makes the continent resemble a boar.
That area is very volcanic. That's about as much as I can tell you. I don't know if it resembles exactly what that would look like.
Like Hawaii is that volcanic chain.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of Hawaii. Maybe that rim that maybe one time, like long ago, that was like the remnants of a really big crater or something like that. Not. Otherwise, I don't know. It looks cool. But yeah, that area is a little spicy, you might say.
Well, what else do we need to say about the book, Brianna? What else was on your notes?
Oh, we've gone through all of Heath's notes.
I've gone through all of my notes.
We talked about wings.
Oh, I did notice an odd a shield maiden moment for Charris. His mother leaps in front of him. When Kindy is coming in for the kill, Charris's mother leaps in front of him.
Oh, yeah. I just lost internet for a second because my dumbass literally turned my internet off by clicking the wrong button. So I just wanted to share that. Hold on. I'm going to pull up the other interview that I mentioned because there was something that Heath asked me last time and I couldn't remember the answer. And as it turns out, a while ago, someone asked me the same question when it was more recent, when this book was more recent in my mind. He was asking me about my sources of inspiration. So give me 1 second. I should have had this already.
It was dragons.
It was dragons. Here we go. All right, so this is something that I said in October of 2021. Wait, I've lost it. So this was in the Indie View, which is just a website with for independent authors. And so it said, are there any particular authors that have influenced how you write? And if so, have they influenced you? At the time, I said, Maggie Stiefvater and Pierce Brown were both heavily influential on me. There are two major series, the Raven Cycle and the Red Rising trilogy, respectively, have set the standard in my mind for how to write characters. I still stand by that. Actually, I would add to that list. What's it called? Daughter of Smoke and Bone, that trilogy. I would add that now. That's also a fantastic young adult series, actually, with amazing characters. And then I said also Pierce Brown's series, along with Suzanne Collins, The Hunger Games, really inspired me with how to tell dark epic stories that deal realistically with characters' psychology and emotions. So there you go. Does that answer your question now, Heath?
Sources of inspiration.
Yes. And I think that's a good list stylistically too. I would say I studied those authors. I literally studied them, really learned a lot from them for how to write, because those are all, well, Maggie Stiefvater writes young adult. Pierce Brown, his stuff is actually adult, but it is kind of on that, it is very tonally similar. It's on that edge where the character starts off as a teenager, and some people were kind of like, is this young adult? It's like, no, because he doesn't stay there. And that is a story. The Red Rising trilogy deals with rising up against an empire and stuff like that. It's done very well. Oh man, I need to reread those books. They're so good, because those books also deal a lot with these dark questions around there's ethical implications of killing and of revenge, and it's so beautifully written. You're very much in the minds of the character, and I thought those were just high standards that I really admire those authors, and Hunger Games too, of course.
Okay.
Cool.
Was there another note?
No, I don't think so. Well, let me see if there was anything else in here that might.
Okay, Doug, do you have anything else? Major topics to address?
Mostly praise for what when you write 800 pages, you're either incompetent and don't know how to, you're lost in the woods and you no one told you to stop, and you've laid this gigantic mess of a narrative, and this book was anything but that. Like, I never sensed in any chapter that the story had been adrift or was adrift. I didn't sense and again, I hate to say it like this because sometimes you have a critical side, but like, I didn't sense that Brianna didn't know what she was doing in terms of like constructing the scenes, and to sustain that over 109 chapters is extremely difficult. So, at first, if I had to go back in time 7 months ago, whatever, when I first discovered Brianna's book, I'd have been like, man, doesn't know how to end a story. This is insane. I withdraw all of that thinking because, and I want to replace it with a little bit of praise in that it's not easy to write a story this length if it's good, and it's every chapter is where it needs to be. The characters have full arcs, so it's actually difficult to write a book this long and maintain the level that Brianna maintained. So that's impressive. The world building was impressive. I made many notes along the way on the world building, including her. Brianna, for those who don't know, Brianna has a pronunciation guide at the end of the book to help you, and it's like 8 pages of pronunciation. So like it is serious. It tells you where the. So all I'm saying is a lot went into this. This had all the obsessive, and I say this in the positive way, the creative, obsessive passion that writers have when they construct their story. And yet it's a coherent, well fleshed out, rich, epic tale with multiple characters, and the story holds up across every chapter all the way to the end. So it's quite an accomplishment, and I think it's a shame that more people haven't found it and read it.
Yes.
And we could talk about that. Yeah, I'd be happy to, if there's ways to help get people to get this book in their hands, that'd be great, because they're going to be rewarded, especially people who like young adult story. And I actually do not get into the young adult stories that much. And yet I had no problem with this one. So it's a great tale. And I was also going to say, leave a rating for Brianna on Amazon and Goodreads. I thought I was letting Brianna down because she left great ratings on both of my books. And I was like, God, I haven't left one on her. But I, like most of us, I'm like, I'm going to wait till I read the book. Well,
yeah,
we read the book. Go leave a rating. Go to Amazon, leave a rating. Go to Goodreads, leave a rating. And Brianna, is there any other place you would like to see a rating left?
Barnes and Noble, if you buy it from there, they could use some more there, but those are the ones that really matter, Amazon and Goodreads, because that's what helps more people find them.
Yeah. So how many ratings is she up to? Okay, 15.
Not many.
Let's get that up to at least 25. Because listen,
oh yes, I will need to leave mine now.
Yes, customers
who bought this book also bought.
I know it's been saying that for a while.
Yeah,
that's definitely. I see you, Table Talk community.
That's the Table Talk community right there. That yes,
we have invaded Amazon's algorithm.
Together.
Affecting the algorithm.
Yes. So I'm gonna put this in the. I mean, it's in the link below, but I'm gonna put it in the chat as well.
But yeah, that really helps independent authors. And yeah, I'm not doing much. I'm not really. I did a little bit of some experimental marketing for this in June, which was fun. But I'm not prioritizing that until I have more books. But when that time comes, there will come a time where I'm going to be going hard on this and other stories. So so I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you really want to have about 25 for people to think it's worth buying. That's what I've read. That's what I've heard. So you really want. So let's get her up to 25. Leave a rating. You don't have if writing a review makes you balk, don't worry about it. Just leave a rating.
Just leave the number of stars. Just hit the number of stars.
Yeah, at the very least. And if you are the type of person like myself that likes writing reviews, obviously leave the review because people do read those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like that will sell the book.
Am I on the right? This is the right place.
Yeah, that's I need to update my website. I haven't done anything with it in a while, but yes.
So that is the website. But here's the subscribe because you do send out a newsletter once a month.
I do. I just sent one out this morning. In fact, some people watching might have come from the newsletter. I don't know. Hello.
And you get a free copy of deleted scenes from City of Reckoning. So there were deleted scenes.
Yeah, if you want more City of Reckoning,
that is crazy.
Because that is the primary way to hear from you. If you want to hear from Brianna,
yeah.
There's not social media and stuff. The primary way is to sign up on this and get the monthly.
It usually goes out end of the month, sometimes beginning of the following month if I'm behind. But I used to be someone that was very active on Twitter, rest in peace, and Instagram. And I all that energy I've devoted into doing a newsletter instead. I still occasionally post things on Instagram, but it's not, if you really want to like keep up with what I'm doing, that's the way to do it. I put a lot of heart and love into that newsletter. So yeah, I have one other thing I want to say. I just remembered something I kind of wish I'd said in the first chat, which just about my sort of emotional relationship to this book, which I think is kind of an interesting note to add, because when I was I don't know what the right phrase is for this. I want to say it's a passion project. That City of Reckoning was a passion project. I don't like that phrase because I feel like I'm passionate about any story I write. Yeah, totally. If I'm writing a story, it's because I care about it deeply. But there have been 2 times in my life so far where there's been a project it wasn't just that I cared about it. It was like obsession.
That obsessive, it was like creative.
Yeah, it was like, I can't die until I tell this story. Like that kind of intense feeling. Like I'm meant to tell this story. It's very like I feel like I'm going insane and I have to. City of Reckoning was like that for me. And I thought I foolishly thought that it would be the only one that would ever give me that feeling. And once I wrote City Reckoning, I would be free. Well, unfortunately, one of my projects right now, Dark Goddess, gives me the exact same feeling. So it's happened again, but that's okay. It'll probably continue to happen throughout my life. There's the story. I must write this. But anyway, that was a part of, what you're sensing with that passion in the, what I was pouring into the world, and the fact that it sustained me for 7 years of writing and rewriting and me going through all sorts of changes as a person. That story was one of those like really deep from the gut, like something that my soul and subconscious really needed to tell. And I think in retrospect, when I look back, I think it was sort of therapy for myself in a way. Like I think it was a way that I was, teaching myself the lessons in a sense. Especially the importance of relying on other people and not being isolated. I think that was something that I kind of needed to know at the time, and I was telling myself that through writing the story. So so I just wanted to share that, like, this is definitely a story that was, very, very dear to me in a way that not every story I ever write is. And I hope one day people will get to hear my other passion, obsession project, the Dark Goddess story, which is, a work in progress at the moment. But yes, anyway, I just wanted to share that.
That's great. I'm glad you did.
Very awesome.
Well, so where do we go from here? So like we're talking about, I have been, I was telling Doug before we started that I finished writing my scripts for the Cultist RPG marketing videos. Basically, they're going to come out on the Heath's Geekverse channel, so I'm going to shoot those tomorrow, and then I'm going to start putting those out so we can start going with that. So we're probably going to talk about some more of the Cultists, perhaps starting next week. Doug, next week might be the good one for you to interview me. So, and then we'll see. So we talked about that. So that
no softball questions. I'm coming right at you.
I know. Come after me. Come after me. So that could be a good one for next Tuesday. To do. Then Brianna will be back. We do want to actually just talk about the Cultists and have the watch it because it's only an hour long, the first season. Discuss that here. We may reach out to some other people. I have on my list, as soon as these videos get out and start going and things like that, I have on my list to contact some other people. We can have them on the show, maybe other YouTubers and things like that. So that's coming. So that's probably our next major kind of project here. But we have still what book we want to tell people about books to read? Do we need
I know we have a list, so maybe we should decide what the next one is. There are some that I'm sitting here ready and waiting. I know I have notes for the beginning of Genesis. I have notes for Paradise Lost. I'm just ready whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, all right. So tell everybody here in the chat. So there are some big things to read. So we wanted to do some biblical stuff. So you just start the beginning. That would be Genesis. So start with the beginning and
specifically the first 3 chapters to talk about the creation stories.
Okay, so that's not reading all of Genesis for the first one. So we're talking about like the first 3 chapters of Genesis.
Chapter 1, which is a story, that's a contained story. Chapters 2 and 3 are a contained story, and so I think discussing those together will be fun.
So Genesis, and then we'll just keep going there because I'm supposed to read, I think, some of Exodus for what I'm working on right now. I got a sign reading, but I might have to get to that. But so there's Genesis, there is Paradise Lost, which I have already been through, but I'm going to go through again in even greater detail. I think I listened to it twice.
Wow.
So I got into that. So I've listened to it twice, but I'm going to listen to it again as I'm actually reading it and taking notes and things like that and going through. So Paradise Lost, if you haven't done that one, we'll do dates, but that's coming up. We had talked about doing one of Cameron's books.
Yeah, Mother of Believers, I think, was the one we were discussing.
We had talked about Mother of Believers. This is another brick here, another brick. So Doug had already started Mother of Believers. So we're like, okay, so maybe this one. I'm kind of interested in the one that's about the Crusades as well. But Mother of Believers, we can talk to him about it. I'm sure there's also a Heroine's Labyrinth angle on this. I'm sure we will probably compare some different translations, right? Although, actually, what version of which Bible? Oh, I got to get that Bible.
I'll grab my Bible. I'll show you.
Grab that. Yeah. So I was thinking in terms of Paradise Lost. Okay, Genesis, Mother of Believers. That'll be after the Cultists. We'll come up with particular dates. I'm just letting people know. Okay, the new Oxford
the 5th edition, fully revised and expanded, new Oxford annotated Bible, new revised standard version with the Apocrypha.
The Apocrypha, that's important.
And that is specific. Wait, I have a really quick story to tell. So I really wanted this specific edition of the Bible, and it's because it's a really good one for non-religious study. It's one.
Wait, hold that up again. I'll type it in the comments. What it is?
New Oxford Annotated Bible, specifically the 5th edition. Is really good. Has really good notes. Sorry, that was gross. I'm still sick. And this is a little bit hard for me to breathe a little bit. Yeah, 5th edition, New Oxford Annotated Bible. And that is a NRSV. That is the edition. That is the version. I mean, the NRSV. And so I wanted this, and I wanted this in hardcover. So I went to Barnes and Noble, and I had them order it for me because they didn't have it in stock. And when I come to pick it up, it's not the 5th edition. They got me like the 3rd or the 4th edition or something. I was like, what? I showed on my phone. I was like, this. It has a different cover. It's like, okay, that's fine. Whatever. Human error. It's a mistake. That's fine. And so, I went through the issue of returning it, whatever, and then I was like, hey, I want this specific thing. And they're like, okay, sweet. So I go and I pick it up, and guess what it was? It was this edition in paperback. I was like, are you kidding me?
Close, Brianna.
I just won my copy, and then there was like something complicated with the return, because I'm returning it again. So like they didn't have record of the other one and whatever. Fortunately, the manager of Barnes & Noble recognized me, and she helped me out, and I finally got what I wanted. So yes, the 5th edition New Oxford Annotated Bible hardcover is what I own now. But I'm reading this with my my roommate Karina, who's never read the Bible before, and we are currently in First Kings. So been making our way through, reading like about 9 chapters a week. So, yep.
Okay, so this
side note story.
Think about Bible. Here we go. Well, I'm saying so. This. What have you got?
You haven't read the Bible until you've read it in the original Klingon.
Whoa.
Oh. It's the Torah. It's the Hebrew version.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my roommate, she's Jewish. She's like non-practicing Jewish, and then she has a version that is it's a Messianic Bible, so it's cool because it's fun to compare, because hers has all the like Christian books, but it has the original Hebrew names of the characters, and it has like the numbering and stuff that you'd find more and like Hebrew Bibles and whatnot. So and the ordering is different. Her books are in a different order than mine. So yeah, it's fun to compare.
Yeah.
Go Book of Tobit. We might have to get. I was going to bring up. So what we're talking about. So I want to get that version, Brianna, because that sounds very interesting. But also, I guess I need to order some Bibles for this coming up here. I also want to get my own copy of this right here, Dake's Annotated Reference Bible.
Oh,
this
never
is
heard of this
the
one.
King James. And this one is the reason I want this one is because this one's what originally inspired Theophany.
Okay.
The notes in here, my grandfather had this one, and this one I remember reading the notes in here that talked about the pre-Adamite civilization and the passages that talked about that and kind of this stuff. So I don't have this, so I will have to get this and then those. So letting people know if you know what's coming up. So I think we're at our best when we're having the deep conversations. So those are definitely it. Now I mean, this is not right now, but I still want to really organize Tolkien, a discussion of Tolkien. And also try to reach out to some other people as well who are Tolkien scholars and have a discussion, starting with like The Hobbit. I mean, The Hobbit is easy to get through. We can go, through The Hobbit, and then we can go through The Lord of the Rings. Anybody who's interested. But my assigned reading is also from there. I believe the Odyssey. Have you been through that, Brianna?
I would love to reread Homer. I read Homer a long time ago.
I am supposed to read some of Exodus, and then also I believe it's the Odyssey that I was told to go through for the story that I'm reading or writing right now, going back to the Clovis story, and I'm supposed to do that. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it. There's like, okay, I got to read, I got to write. So there's also on my assigned reading list is Homer. So if anybody out there is with us in the audience who would like to know what's kind of coming up. We don't have dates there, but hey, those are the kinds of books that we're going at. I it's probably
light
both
reading,
the Odyssey
light
and
summer reading.
Right. This is light summer reading.
Gilgamesh.
Oh yeah, I still haven't read that.
Yeah, I mean Gilgamesh. That's so. Yeah. So that, once again, the big stack of books is still there, and I still Gates of Fire is over there because eventually I would like to have Stephen Pressfield on. We got to have Stephen Pressfield on because by the way, Stephen Pressfield is one of my favorite authors, and
I have his email address.
You have his email address. Stephen
Yeah.
Pressfield has the blurb on Mother of Believers. So
let's see. Yeah, because Cameron knows him, doesn't he? Or he met him.
Right, Cameron knows him. Yes,
Yeah.
they've gotten together and had coffee. So he wrote The Art of War, which no, the War of Art,
whichever one it is.
Yeah, he wrote The War of Art, which we read on the Morning Grind live stream. All right, well, thank you everybody for being here.
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
glad we did it,
everybody.
Brianna. I'm glad the at least these make us get things read. So that was like, all right,
Yeah.
Brianna's book is
We
there.
did it.
We did it.
It is done. I wish I had
Guys,
something.
we
something to toast with,
toppled
but we
the
did it.
empire. We did it.
We did it. We did it. We have been through this one. So that's. I mean, we have moved through some books, not as fast as we would have liked, I think, but we're hitting big ones and good ones. So.
Well, we did it. I mean, we set out to do it.
So we'll talk about that,
so.
but we'll talk about some of the cultists and stuff like that. And we've done it. So, yeah. So I guess I'm hoping cultists should be next up. So if you're with me, we'll be on the morning grind in the morning. Yeah, let's do you interview me on Tuesday.
Oh man.
All right. So everybody wants to do that, see that. So if you're here, I will be interviewed by Doug. He can get into that. Yeah, no softball questions. He can get in
Hard-hitting reporting here.
Makes me me.
Who is Heath Robinson?
Yeah. All those deep ones that Heath gave me last time, Doug, you've got to get him back.
Brianna, I will run some questions by you and solicit possible.
well, yes. Let's psychoanalyze Heath and why do you think you chose that symbol, Heath? And
Heath, we notice a certain theme of occultism.
I didn't notice it. Oh my god.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It'll be a good. I'll try to come up with some really good questions for a really good interview and really get as much out about the cultist, the process, the fun project, which it seems like it was. All of that. We'll try to get into all of it.
We can talk about the cultists and we can talk about anything else that is that's fine. All right. Well, thank you everybody. We are out of here, I suppose. So I will see everybody tomorrow for the morning grind. We'll be looking at something, maybe the Mines of Moria RPG. Oh, Doug, what you got?
Yeah, I was just gonna say tomorrow I'm actually gonna be on Lorena's channel, Lorena Creole.
Okay.
The Spice Lounge tomorrow, I think at 4:00 Central Time. So it's my first time on her channel, and I guess we're going to be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, which I've seen. It's awesome. And Robert Downey Jr.'s return to the Marvel Universe as Dr. Doom. So pretty cool topics, actually, this week to talk about.
I would love to have her on the channel sometime. We haven't gotten her on, but so I'll put this over here. Doug. So Doug will be over visiting. If I see it, it's gonna be tomorrow. I'm gonna be sitting here at the computer all day tomorrow. So text me the link. Or it might already be up. I don't know. Let's see.
I think the link is up on live. Yeah, on live.
Okay, wait, hang on. Let me just put the whole channel right here. So if you're not subscribed to Lorena, here we go. Lorena's channel. But we'll try to put this in the table talk section of the Discord server as well. What's going on?
Nothing. Sable's making fun of my comment.
Okay. This is a lot. So streamed. Is that tomorrow? Oh, impending doom. Impending doom. Is this what you're gonna be on tomorrow? It. Okay. Well, okay. So it's okay. So
his face is in the corner there. You see?
Oh, you are way down there. There you are. You're right there. There you go. The secret
impending
lounge.
Doom, and it's my face.
Impending doom. Can RDJ and the Rousseaus save Disney? Marvel news at SDCC, the Spice Lounge. So, All right. Okay. All right. I'll post a direct link there. So everybody, all right, that's tomorrow. You want to see Doug? Hopefully I'll be able to hop in. So direct link to the stream. Fun. All right. So there's a lot more YouTube to go. I'm excited. There's so much stuff to do. All right, we gotta get it done.
Yeah,
I always like being on these streams because it's energizing. When I haven't streamed, of course we streamed last week, but I don't know. I missed my Sunday stream because I was playing games with my brother at his house Saturday night, and we stayed up and we're playing games, and so I didn't make it back Sunday morning. So I feel like I haven't got the jolt of energy from the streams. So this is great. All right, everybody, have a wonderful evening. We will see you on Table Talk next week. And I'll see everybody on the Heath Geek First channel tomorrow morning for the morning grind. Thank you so much, Brianna and Doug.
Thank you, later.